Halomid mechaveru, a person that learns from his friend one line, one chapter, or one law, or one sentence, or one word, or even one letter. Right? When you were young, somebody taught you aleph base. Those two letters. You already knew aleph, he taught you base. Tzarich linahog bo kavod, you have to give him honor. Shekin Metzina but David, because that's what we find in David, the king of Israel, that he didn't learn from Achitophel except for two things. And he called him, here it says, even if you learn one thing, what's his two things? Okay, we'll see. He called him my rabbi, my teacher, my master, my how do you say, educator. Like it says, Ata anesh ka'arki alufe miyodai. That's what King David said about Achitophel. Now Achitophel in the end became a big enemy of King David, right? Became David's enemy, tried to kill him. So if so, it's what we call a kol v'chomer. Just as David HaMelech, that he didn't learn from Achitophel except just two things, and he called him my master, my teacher, my educator. If a person learns from his friend one chapter or a law or a sentence or even one word or even one letter, how much more so he should give him honor. I guess this how much more so is the part because it's King David, but we'll see. He's a king, we're not kings. And there's no honor except for Torah, like it says, Kavod Chachamim Yinchalu V'Tamimim Yinchalu Tov. It's referring to the Torah. But Ein Tov El Torah, the only good is the Torah. Ein Tov El Torah. Like it says, Hilekach Tov Nasati Lechem Torasi Al Tazovo. Like it says, I have given you a good teaching. My Torah, do not leave it. Okay, what is going on over here? What is happening? What does this mean? A person that learns one chapter, one law, one sentence, one word, or one letter, he should give honor. You have to give honor to that person if he taught you. And where do we learn from that you have to give even one letter? You should give honor from King David, that Achitophel taught him two laws. Two thoughts. Well, how do we learn from that? That even one letter. Maybe if somebody gave one law, two laws. So what's happening over here? And why do you have to give him such big honor? He taught me one letter. Such a big thing. I have to give him honor. Well, let's see. One second. How do I move this thing? There we go. A person learns from his teacher, from his friend. One chapter, one law, one sentence, one word. What does it mean? Dibur shel tam. It means a word that has meaning to it. Dibur shel Torah, a word for Torah. Shetzorech lilmod. You correct somebody, you say one word. Even one letter, like a vav mosef on the first thing, like it says, Ugachalim omamos ein mavorchin aleim, bore moria eish. Vishala, and there's a question in the Gemara. It says that Motzi Shabbos, you're supposed to bless on a fire. Right? This is giving an example of how one letter you have to thank somebody. Okay, what is the example? There's a law that Motzi Shabbos you have to bless on fire. You have to make a blessing on fire. You make a blessing bor and moreish. What if you don't have any fire? What if you just have glowing coals? Says you don't make a blessing bor and moreish. You have to like blow on them or something and make the fire come out. The Gemara comes out. Omomos, it says, omomos. Omomos, is it with the letter aleph? Or omomos, or almost with an ayin? Right? How do you spell it, in other words? Omom with an aleph or omom with an ayin? Omom means dim down. How do you spell it? And it says, this is learning with one letter. It comes out with it's an ayin. Almost, I think. Yes. You have to give him honor. Why? Because of the honor of the Torah. We can't perceive how important the Torah is. That's what we find in David Melech Yisrael, that he didn't learn from Achitophel except just two things alone. Namely, what? What didn't he learn from Achitophel? What? Shelo yilmad yechidi. Number one, what did he teach him? What did Achitofel teach him? Don't learn Torah alone, and that you should go, when you go to shul, you should go with emotion. Those are the two things that Achitofel taught King David. Don't learn Torah alone, and when you go to shul, it has to be an emotional experience, like it says, be'ema b'charada. You have to go with awe. In other words, you're going to a place to meet Hashem. So he only taught him these two things, Vakaro, and taught and called him. Who called him? David called to Achitofel, Rabo Alufal Miyuda'o. Like it says, Ata, he called him my teacher, my master, my educator. Targumu Ant, the Aramaic translation is Ant, you, Achitofel. Gavra are a person, the Domili, that are similar to me. Rav, the Alafat Li, a teacher that taught me. V'ha v'mahuda chachmata li, and you informed me of wisdom. Here is in Aramaic. You have taught me just like a rabbi, and you've taught me to learn, to understand wisdom. You just taught him one little thing. Says that shows you how grateful you have to be for the words of Torah. I remember once I was in America, and I didn't know that there's this law over there. You have to have exact change when you go on the bus. And I had to take this bus somewhere, and I had like a $10 bill or a $5 bill, and the driver doesn't give change. I guess it's forbidden for them to show that he has money because he gets robbed if he says carries money. So he doesn't carry any money at all. Whatever the logic behind it is, I didn't have any money. I had the $5 bill, and somebody on the bus just gave me a quarter. He gave me a quarter. I was very grateful. Without the quarter, I couldn't have driven. I couldn't have gone on the trip. Now, if I would be I'm grateful for a quarter, which I was. In the end, somebody changed my thing, and I gave the guy the bag money back. But if somebody would have, to be grateful for a quarter, of course I was grateful. How much more you should be grateful for one word of Torah? Torah is godliness. Therefore, he taught them. He called them. You are my halo davrim kol v'chomer. Is this not a kol v'chomer? Isn't this a kol v'chomer means, how do you say, light to heavy? Light to heavy means if, Samson could pick up 1,000 pounds, for sure he could pick up 10 pounds. If he could do this heavy thing, then sure he could do the easy thing. So the same thing. That with King David, Shalom Adi only learned from Achitofel two things, like we said before. He called him a teacher because of those two things. If so, one who learns from his friend even one word, like we said before, how much more so? Okay, what is this how much more so? What's going on over here? Kalomar, in other words, a hedyot, a normal person like me and you, Shechavero Amido Alameda Emet, that his friend told him something that made him see the truth. Even if it was one letter, like we talked about before, how to spell something correctly. We can see how important one letter is, right? You write somebody a whole treatise, and you send it in an email, and you get the period wrong, or you put instead of you put two, make a capital letter instead of a small letter, whatever it is, and it doesn't go through. The whole thing is one letter. How much more so that it's necessary to give him honor. Why? Because it could be that from one letter from the Torah you can learn things and make a total mistake. What does it mean? King David was a king. He was a king, and nevertheless he was grateful, and he was humble in front of somebody that taught him just one thing. How much more so we should be grateful if someone teaches us one thing. But King David, of course, he taught him more. He taught him two whole laws. But it says, but King David was a king. King David, so how much more so us? And it says, Ein kavod la Torah, there's no glory, no honor except for the Torah. Ein kavod bo adam, the only true honor that comes to a person is when he learns the Torah. Like it says, Tavid chacham yinchalu. Chachmei Torah, those people who have the Torah, they get honor. Like it says, Tmimim yinchalu tov. Like it says, the wholehearted ones they inherit good. Tmimim, these are the pupils. They get good. Ein tov el Torah. The only good is in the Torah. Okay, you can ask a question, obvious question. I mean, there's a lot of, the president of the United States, the president of this, the king of here, the king of there, the rich people, they get all sorts of honor. And people will learn Torah. They don't, what do you see they get honor? I don't see they get honor. Their names are in the paper. The pictures are in the New York Times or whatever. What type of honor do they get? The people that get the honor, those are the people who make a lot of money. They're very powerful. They do the sports. They do something. That's honor. Learning Torah, you see one of these people, people get honor because we bring on a basketball court. Now we want to bring Rav Grois that he learned Maseches Brachas. Let's have a big hand for him. Who's going to give him? Who even knows who he is? What do we care? It's better some guy who made 100 points in one game. Oh, this is a big thing. So the answer is yeah, it's true. This world is a very deceptive and false world. That's what's really, really valuable, people don't value at all. And what is really stupid and has no value to whatsoever, that people, give it the greatest value you could possibly imagine. So we see that, that people, for instance, the masses can be manipulated. In Russia, everybody thought that Stalin was the savior of mankind, the greatest human that ever lived. In fact, he was one of the greatest murderers and sadists that had ever existed in the history of the world. He was just terrible. They killed 50 million of his own people, but everybody loved him. So he got tremendous honor. He got honor and power and everything, right? Was it really worth it what he got, what he had? It really meant anything? Even on his terms, it didn't mean anything. I mean, for no other reason that he died. So he's not getting any of this honor. On the other hand, the person that does something that's eternal. So if you're looking for recognition from the world, it's a big doubt if you're going to get it, but it's not really worth that much. On the other hand, if you're looking for recognition for Hashem, you're doing something that's eternal, something that's infinite. So that thing you do is infinite, just like your soul is infinite. You're doing soul things. The soul things are infinite. So that's what he says. Learning Torah is an infinite business. You're dealing with the wisdom of Hashem. Therefore, if somebody teaches you a little bit of Torah, you have to be very grateful to them that you know an idea of Torah, that you have infinite importance. Let's go to the next. Okay, this is the way of the Torah. This is the way of the Torah. Bread with salt you should eat. Water that is measured out you should drink. On the earth you should sleep. A difficult life you will live. And in Torah you should always work. And if you do so, happy are you and it will be good for you. Happy will you be in this world and it will be good for you in the world to come. Okay, let's just learn that part first. Now we'll go to the second part. Okay, now listen, can't take this very seriously. Now, I can't literally, I'm sorry, you must take it seriously, of course, but you can't take it too literally. Life has to be tempered with enjoyment also. In other words, of course, everything you do has to be for the sake of heaven, but a person should have a bed. Here he says, you don't have a bed. A person should have food to eat. All he eats is bread and salt and water. That's what it says over here. His whole life has to be a life of difficulty, tsar. Why? Well, you shouldn't have nice clothes. You can't have a car. You have to walk everywhere. You can't have any money. You can't have it. So let's see what this means. Let's see what the simple meaning. What are we supposed to take out of this? The Lubavitcher Rebbe said a lot of times that every Jew is supposed to be rich. And that's what Mashiach will make. Everybody's supposed to be rich. So being rich is a good thing. But of course, it shouldn't take you from Torah. So let's see what's the message over here. Let's see. And then we'll go back. Kachi darcha shel Torah. This is the way of the Torah. Excuse me. This is the way of working at the Torah. You have to eat bread with salt and measured out water you should drink. In other words, like Yechezkel said, Meshura means a small amount. Meshura means mida katana, from liquids. And you should drink you should sleep on the ground without a not a mattress, for sure not even a pillow for your head. You should live a life of difficulty, that the conditions of your life should be harsh, and it will cause you, how do you say, pain. Then you can really start to learn the Torah. Nevertheless, you should work at the Torah, and that's what Rashi says. Even if you do not have what to eat except for a little bit of bread and salt to dip it in, nevertheless, don't stop learning Torah. Oh, so this is already a different way of learning. It's not saying you should look for difficulties. You should definitely not look for difficulties. But if, God forbid, a person's life is miserable, nevertheless, that's not an excuse that he should stop learning Torah. Because even if all you have is just bread and water and you don't even have a pillow, you have to sleep on the ground, nevertheless, you should learn Torah. Don't be a bum on the streets, learn Torah. But unfortunately, some people say that this is also a warning to the rich person. This is a rich person. What he should absolve all of his richness, go and that's not Judaism. Let's see what it is. A person that has and has the possibility to get pleasure and all the pleasures of the world, that he's saying, don't get used to it. Don't get used to it. The life that you should be one that's devoted to Torah. You're not interested in the pleasures of the world. You can get pleasures of the world, 100%. You can dress nicely, buy $5,000 suits, whatever you want to, but don't get any pleasure from these things. You only do it because you need it, because it's necessary. If you don't wear a $5,000 suit, nobody's going to look at you. You won't get a job. Who knows what? To impress people in the Senate, to impress the king. But you eat this fine food because it's a mitzvah to do on Shabbos. But don't look forward to pleasures of the world. Because if you get too much pleasure, v'pinukot, v'tafnukot, and how do you say, your dainties and things that you're steeping yourself in, is you won't be able to learn Torah properly. One more piece of cake. I saw there was a nice piece of chocolate over there, and then I'm really going to learn the Torah. Huh? He sits down and he learns, and he says, maybe just one more of those candies. One more. But lo Torah, kinyan nafsha, the Torah won't be part of your soul. Also, if a person accustoms himself, if a person accustoms himself to the pleasures of the world, then it will be necessary for him to stop learning Torah. Why? Because you have to have money to buy these things, right? A person that wears a $5,000 suit, he usually does not have a wardrobe of one suit. He usually has, every day is a different suit. And then he meets different people and says, listen, somebody's going to remember that I wore this on Tuesday. You have to have a different, he's got to give different color suits and different combinations of shoes and the hat and this. He's going to have to go and work hard in order to make a lot of money in order for his expenses. Therefore, he's here, but therefore it says in a general way to the rich people and the poor people, Torah will not be acquired unless you work hard and you are willing to give up extra things, moisrois, the extra things of life, and you have to judge yourself to know what's extra. And tanugim, like it says, Ein Torah mitkayemes elo misha mimis atzmo oleh. The Torah does not remain in one. The Torah only remains in a person that kills himself over the Torah. That kills himself over the Torah. In other words, you have to do what they call egocide, not suicide. Egocide. You have to kill your ego a little bit. You want another nice, whatever it is, another piece of cake, or you want another nice pair of shoes. You already have shoes like that. Yeah, but I don't have any tan ones. You understand? And you have to have 14 hats, and you have to this. You don't need all that. It's nice to get pleasure from the world, but it is definitely not the reason you're here in the world. And if you do so, ashrecha v'tov lach, you will be happy. happy in this world, and it will be good in the world to come. Because mishu lahut achrei tainu geolam, a person that's running after the pleasures of this world, tarudhu tamid lamalei taiva, so he's always trying to get his pleasures, and there won't be any rest for his soul. I worked a little bit with people that had addictions, addicts, drug addicts, and mostly alcoholics. And there's other types of addictions. There's like 1,000 different types of addictions, maybe even more. People are addicted to work, and people are addicted to whatever is video games, gambling. And usually there's one saying that goes along with all this, and that is that the spiritual emptiness cannot be filled by physical things. So a person is feeling, spiritually empty. He feels he has no purpose in his life. So he gets drunk, or he buys a new car, or he gets whatever as something. And temporarily it takes his mind off of it, right? Or it confuses him. Right? In the case of drinking, the person gets all confused, and he thinks that's okay. It's right. He feels happy. He's confused. But the fact of the matter is that the lacking that he has is not, he just turned his attention from it. It's still a big hole there. And the physical can never fill the spiritual. The spiritual needs of a Jew can only be filled really, truly by the Torah. And we're talking about learning the Torah in a proper way. Why? Because the Torah gives a person responsibility. The Torah makes you, active. That's what it's supposed to do. The Torah is supposed to make you active. That you want to do more. You want to learn more. You want to help more. You want to teach more. You want to be more positive. It shows you the importance of the world. That's what the Torah is supposed to be. It says the Torah can also be an elixir of death. Samtam. So it says the Torah can be an elixir of life, right? Eitz Chaim. It can also kill a person. The Torah, people can learn Torah, and now they have better excuses for all the sins that they do. If it doesn't touch a person's soul. Nevertheless, after all, that you have to take the instructions properly. The Rebbe once said, in a drugstore, a pharmacist, he's got all the drugs, he's got all the cures for all the diseases in the drugstore, right? So what do you need a pharmacist for? You've got all, it says, because the pharmacist has to tell you, and even more, it says on the prescription, the doctor says you have to take this drug. So you know which one to take, So the answer is no. The doctor knows exactly, the pharmacist knows how much to take. He can tell you exactly what to take and exactly what type to take. That's what it's supposed to be. Nowadays, it might be even less, I don't know, with prescription medicine, but nevertheless, that was supposed to be the idea. It's the same thing. A person can learn Torah, and the Torah can be bad for him, but nevertheless, the Torah is the only solution. The only solution. It can be misused. You can have the improper medication, the improper amounts, but the Torah is the answer. A person who suffices with what God gave him in the physical world, and also he makes his children and his family also that they should be happy with what they have, in order that they'll be able to learn Torah and do commandments. Happy is he in this world, and happy will he be in the world to come. And we'll continue this Mishnah, God willing, tomorrow. Now let's start